Greetings, I'm Roberto Valdez. New Mexico is full of awesome landscapes. I am a Spanish New Mexican, and I would like to take you on an exploration of my land and the heritage of its people.
The heritage are the names on the landscape, and we will use a visual aid for virtual exploration, that being Google Earth Mapping Service. On the North American continent, north of the Chihuahuan Desert, and at the southern end of the Rocky Mountains, is a land we call Nuevo Mexico, or New Mexico. The political entities or states encompassing this region are New Mexico, Arizona, Utah, and Colorado. The region is just north of the subtropical climate zone, at the southern edge of the temperate climate zone. Within this region are different homelands and linguistic groups that have left their mark on the landscape. Examples include the Navajo homeland, encompassed by Cardinal Mountains, a Tewa homeland, also encompassed by 4 Cardinal Mountains, and a Hispano homeland that to its greatest extent has left linguistic artifacts over a vast region. The Tewa Pueblos are affiliated with 6 organized tribal governments located in the north-central state of New Mexico. 4 Cardinal Mountains define their symbolic territory, and depicted here are the Cardinal Mountains associated with the Pueblo de San Juan, or Oque Oingue. Each mountain is invoked in a counter-sunwise direction in their belief system, with associated colors. Beginning in the north, they are Sechupin, meaning hazy or shimmering mountain in Tewa. It is known as Cerro Congilon in Spanish, that roughly translates to Antler Mountain. The western Cardinal Mountain is Tsicumupin, meaning mountain covered in flaking stone. It is also known in Spanish as Cerro Chicoma, derived of course from the Tewa. It is assigned a yellow color by the Tewa. Ocupin, meaning Turtle Mountain. Its cardinal color is red. This view allows you to imagine the turtle. It is called in Spanish the Sierra Sandia, sandia meaning watermelon. It is so named because it looks like the rounded shape of a section of watermelon. In the east there is Cusenpin, translated as Stone Man or Rockhorn Mountains, known in Spanish as the Sierra de las Truchas or Sawtooth Mountains of the Trout. The cultural patrimony of place names in this region grew out of the people's way of life that depended on drawing resources from the land in a sustainable way, called traditional resource procurement. 3 language groups demonstrate their presence on the land in the Espanola Valley. If we take a sample of the cultural landscape, we can compare the 3 language groups. Shown here is a sample area of everything from the low river valleys to the high mountains. Our sample area is about 28 miles long and 8.5 miles wide, representing an area covered by 4 U.S. Geological Survey maps. Place names in American English within this area are represented in blue. We see a widely scattered pattern. If we select place names in the Spanish language, we see they are numerous and denser. These names in American English with a black star symbol represent the names accepted in the official Geographic Names Information System database of the U.S. government. These names in New Mexico Spanish with a black star symbol are also on official maps. However, names mostly drawn from the local Hispanic population that have never been recognized before this research by this narrator are here shown as magenta-colored place marks with no star symbol. Over 400 years of Hispano history and heritage, still in common use, is underrepresented in official maps. Now, By selecting the names in the Tewa language, we see another pattern of place names, numerous and strongly condensed around Okeawinge, San Juan Pueblo. This would suggest an introverted worldview, a strong connection to a center where the greater emphasis was on farming, but included a limited pastoralist lifestyle. At the Pueblo of Okeawinge, the traditional belief of these Tewa people holds that their origins were from an underworld through an earth navel known as a Nansipu. A small pile of rocks in the plaza represent this earth navel symbol. There are concentric rings of territory around the Pueblo. The inner one is the domain of women and children. Another around it is the domain of women, but accompanied by men. It is bounded by 4 cardinal hills. Beyond this is the domain of the men, where men engage in traditional resource procurement such as hunting, or to go on pilgrimages. The Hispano worldview also holds that a village is a center of territory. The Spanish have tended to be slightly more extroverted and expansionist than the Tewa Pueblos in the over 400 years of our presence in this region. The pattern of their names may have something to do with our way of life that relied more heavily on cattle, sheep, and horses, and the multi-nucleated nature of our towns and villages. Place names can record events from the distant past, such as warfare with nomadic tribes. Before a binding peace was made with the Comanche in the year 1782, raids by this nation were devastating, and their pathways to raid live on in these place names in the region, depicted here as arroyo features or valley features. Taking some examples, we fly to a place where Tewa warriors once pursued Comanche raiders, and one of them fell off a cliff at Comansi Ketave Inhuhu, meaning large opening where the Comanche fell down. Surrounding the town of Abiquiu in pincer attack fashion are 2 arroyos called Arroyo de los Comanches and Arroyo del Comanche, as well as a water spring called Ojito del Comanche. Abiquiu, once considered an Indian pueblo, its inhabitants voted to become a Hispano pueblo. Another place called Cañada del Comanche, or Gulch of the Comanche, is close to other names recalling other tribes, such as El Banco del Apache, the bench of the Apache, La Cuesta de la Utah, or the upslope of the Ute Indian. These last ones are positioned close to the Pueblo of Okeawinge and the Hispano villages below. Another example is Cañón del Navajo, that is said to have been named when a Navajo spy slipped and fell off a cliff into a campsite of bewildered Mexicans below. Not all sites memorialize conflict. Some memorialize trade routes and campsites. One example is a trail near the Pueblo of Okeawinge, used by the Ute Indians over an impressive basalt plateau. This trail is called the Utah Po, or Utah Trail. Names also memorialize a time when wild horses roamed. They were rounded up and harvested by local Hispanos and Indians in the fall. A small shoulder mountain and basin were named after a wild mare that was a paint or pinta. These names inspired the name Cerro de la Pinta and Rincón de la Pinta. An upland mesa was said to have been named for a tawny or beige-colored stallion, known as a golondrino, and inspired the name Mesa del Golondrino. Down in the canyon below, an isolated bench or banco was visited by a curly-haired mare called La China. So was inspired the name Banco de la China. The last great roundup of 400 horses took place in 1949, for range and grassland improvement and is memorialized at a place called Corrales de los Guardias, meaning corrals of the forest rangers. Hispano husband and wife teams took advantage of homestead laws and moved into remote areas. The women left their mark on the landscape with names memorializing their home sites. Examples include the home of or Casa de Teobalda Aranda, within a canyon named Cañón de Teobalda Aranda. La Vega de Doña Miquelita, a meadow named after Miquela Salazar, who established a home site with her husband Manuel Salazar before the year 1909. And the Casa de Ninfa Mayez, who established a home site with her husband Adolfo Mayez in the early 20th century. The New Mexico Geographic Information Council temporarily contracted this narrator using money from the U.S. Geological Survey for the effort to bring at least some of this research into the database of official names maintained by the U.S. Board on Geographic Names. This region represents a cultural landscape rich in geographic names in 3 languages. The language of the Tewa Pueblos and the New Mexico dialect of Spanish are under threat of extinction, and documenting names is an effort to support the cultures they represent. Here are just some of the many names in the region. A town called Plaza del Coyote, Sierra Valdez, Masicuaye, Tecavecuaye, Mesa Prieta, Leche del Conejo, Arroyo de Vallerecua, Río del Oso, Povipín, Tzinmayopín, Cañón del Retumbido, Puerta del Sol, Los Barranquitos Blancos, Los Barranquitos Arrugados, Río Puerco, Cañada Bonita, La Loma Desbocada, El Ojo, La Cueva Santa, Seyan Ba'a, Peñasco Amarillo del Cañón, Cuevita de la Miel Virgen, El Madero, Piedras de los Santos. This rich heritage represented in the cultural landscapes of the Tewa and Hispano New Mexicans was thought significant enough for Congress to create the Northern Rio Grande National Heritage Area. Place names should be considered part of this cultural landscape.
I hope you'll learn to appreciate New Mexico's rich history. Adios.